Hey good people, Batavia here. Welcome back to my Chicago garden. I told you the next time we were together things would be changed drastically, and they have. So we're going to talk today about what's really doing well in the early stages, which most things normally do, what's struggling a bit, some of the things that I am intervening on, and some things that I'm pretty close to just tossing. So let's dig in. Okay, Doug, super excited about this growing space. My very first garden was in this space. It's changed over the years, but this year we've planted it out and we have summer heaven inside of it. So the space runs 30 feet long, about 4 feet wide or in depth. And I have 3 raised beds inside, but technically I consider it 5 growing spaces, and you'll see once we get inside what I mean. Sweet potatoes have been planted. They have basically been in the ground for less than a week. I try to get my sweet potatoes in the ground once they have about, I don't know, nighttime temps or lows are like 60 degrees plus. However, when that happened, I just wasn't able to get into this space and get them planted. So normally it's like the second week of June, and I each year have gotten a harvest when I've done that. This year it was like basically the 4th week of June, so the very end of June. But I'm still confident that even in the north, in my Chicago garden, we'll get sweet potatoes. So hopefully enough for a pie. We say that every year. So this is one of the little cutout spaces I consider a growing space. This year I have a GreenStalk in it with strawberries. We have some strawberries ripening. I'm thinking ahead about how I'll encourage this space to return next year. And it's probably going to be breaking the towers down and then putting them inside of the raised beds with quite a bit of mulch around it. But we'll cover off on that many months ahead. The next space, tomatoes and peppers. So we returned to growing tomatoes in this space. We took a break, and it's so interesting because I'm seeing some things that I didn't see, like tomatoes forming. That's a large cherry. We have 2 boxcar willies, and that was an accident, but it's a red slicer, and once I realized it, I said I'm just not going to dig it up. It's pretty late in the evening as I was trying to get those in. These were planted in this space June 7th, so that's just 21 days, 3 weeks of growth. And so super pleased with that. We've had the weather, we've had the heat, we've had the rain, so I'm not terribly surprised by how they have taken off. We have peppers in front of it. So this is a shishito, which I've grown in containers before, and I wanted to get it inside of a bed to see how it would do. We have 2 yellow bell peppers. I mostly grow sweet peppers. So like 9 out of 10 peppers in my garden are going to be sweet peppers. And then for the 1 out of 10, it's not going to be a hot, because that's just not my thing. I've played around with it. And yeah, so we have a couple of orange bell peppers. Clearly bell peppers are my thing. Cherokee purple for the next tomato. See a chocolate bell, Cali Wonder. Probably a couple of those. I've been doing them in like sets of 2s. And then a purple beauty back there. And then one of my all-time favorite tomatoes is the pineapple tomato. And we are saying garden prayers over this because I have been growing 2 a year just as coverage. This year I only grew 1. So we have to keep that plant healthy at all costs. Took a break from growing tomatoes in this space, basically the main raised beds, because a few years ago we had some sickness. Never figured out exactly why, but I wanted to make sure I gave this space a break from tomato growing. And in these cutouts is the only space I've grown tomatoes in the last few years. Garlic, which the scapes always get away from me, but I'm keeping an eye on things. I think these couple have gotten a little bit too far. Once you break it off, let's do that. So you see that little pool here? That tells me that this is going to be stringy and tough. but maybe further up the scape will be tasty. So we'll keep an eye on the ones in the front yard to try to be more timely with those. I try to stay on top of it. So I thought this was done. This was oregano that I planted out, and it's overwintered year over year. And it was pretty dead this spring, but it looks like just a little bit of it came back. I have some weeding to do back there, but this space has determinate tomatoes. This was supposed to be the sweet potato space because it's the sunniest space in the backyard. Well, in the cage, maybe I should say. And I changed my mind. I don't even remember why I changed my mind now, but I changed my mind and I put determinate tomatoes back here with the idea of they will come out before the regular indeterminate tomatoes that we just looked at will. They're going to produce a determined amount of tomatoes, and so these are going to be the earliest plants that basically stop producing, and my intention was to get some fall crops in. That was a great plan, but at the time I don't think that I put peppers in the mix, and so I've been doing quite a bit of planting still, and so I haven't had a chance to pay closer attention. There's a purple beauty pepper there. All right, so I don't think the plan was to put peppers in front of the determinate tomatoes because the intention would have been to have a clear space to plant for fall. And my peppers normally go all the way up until like the first frost. They continue to produce, or at least peppers are still on the plant, let's say it that way. So we'll see what we do here. It'll be kind of hard to get behind this space to plant, but we'll figure something out. And I have other spaces to plant. So Cali Wonder, it's putting on some size. Triple Threat, it's supposed to put on yellow, red, and of course all of the pepper starters green, all on one plant. The Purple Beauty, and then I have a jalapeno. All right, confession time. I have things plotted all over as far as things that still need to be planted, but that's not the confession. The confession is I still haven't planted this space. I'm not sure. I've had all kinds of ideas. We never got any of the asparagus crowns in. We thought maybe, I think at one point it was okra, at one point it was celery, because I still have those starts. We'll see. I mean, we'll put something there. So let's cover off on the GreenStalks. Let's talk this middle raised bed, and then we'll get to the front yard and come back for our troubled areas, which are the beds that are covered with insect netting. All right, so GreenStalks. I have already transitioned some of the veggies out, some of the spring planted veggies out, like all of my lettuce. I've pulled all lettuce within the garden. So calendula flowers, which I love. I don't know if it's this particular variety. I think it's Solar Flash, or I just never really gave calendulas a good try, but I love it. My kale is suffering a bit. It's out in the wild, so there's definitely some worm damage. You can see there. So yeah, it may be time for that plant and to sub something else in. My Swiss chard generally does pretty well in the summer. I have some red onions in there, some beets. Who would have thought this gal would love beets? Yeah. I actually think the first note of the season is I didn't grow enough beets. So we have calendulas. I'm trying to do flowers on the bottom. Again, just thinking about kind of animals that crawl along this way. Parsley that is bolted. It prefers the cooler weather, but still edible. I think this is endive, and I kind of left it to be ornamental. It's too bitter for my liking. Ask me why I started it. Ask me why I planted it. Didn't realize it until basically it got into the garden. And then I have subbed in some basil, and fortunately I had, again, a lot of basil volunteers based on some seeds that spread throughout the garden. I've recently planted these out. Flowers, I just put some peppers in, so they're starting to perk up. And then I have 3 types of bush beans. So in this tower, let's see, this one is a regular green bean. I'm supposed to have a label somewhere. Tenderette. And then this one, this has been slow to germinate. This is supposed to be a golden rush, so a gold bean, green bean, gold green bean. And this one you can tell by the color. Isn't that gorgeous? This is going to be a purple bean. It'll green up once you actually cook it. And then this is another area where the heat has given us challenge after challenge. So flowers at the bottom, potatoes, which I did last year, which did well until something started digging into the tiers once the potatoes were producing. We'll try to get ahead of that this year. A few onions, some Swiss chard. Oh, I'll tell you about the broccoli once we get in the front yard. It's long gone from in the garden, but I'll tell you about a use that I found very helpful. Some celery. The celery has been scorched everywhere in the garden, which is unfortunate. Again, it was hard to try to get the garden, continue to plant in it, and to manage against the heat, and to do everything else in life. So, oh, I know the pain. Well, I won't say I know the pain of others that have extreme heat all throughout the summer, but it has been a pain, let's just say that. So, one of the first planted beds, and it's mixed results. Let's uncover it. So black netting, if you see it, typically I'm using it to discourage animals from digging into the beds. This white insect netting is going to be to prevent primarily the cabbage butterfly from getting to the greens, laying eggs, leading to the cabbage worm that ultimately eats away at the leaves. In most years, let's just say it does the job. This year, it's really probably the gardener that's created the mess that we're dealing with now. All right, so let's get this uncovered and we'll take a look. We have yellow Spanish sweet onions, carrots, more yellow onions, more carrots. There are 3 varieties, and this variety has bolted, which I've never had with carrots, and it's so unfortunate. It's going to produce a beautiful flower, but I don't know that it's going to produce a carrot. Let me know if y'all have had this experience and if anything edible has come out of it. I don't think it's going to be, but my other carrots, the Danver carrots and the Envy carrots, another orange carrot, are doing fine. They look pretty good. Well, the greens, the tops look pretty good. I haven't gotten in there to take a look. Let me see, 30, 60. I think we're just at 60 something days, 70 days for seeding these. And then I have the beets. The greens were beautiful just a week ago, but the heat. So I have 2 varieties of beets mixed in with red onions. So let's see. The red onions have definitely started to bulb up. I'll have to look back to see the number of days. The stalks haven't fallen over yet, so not time to harvest yet. Red beets, and I've been pulling them out at various sizes. They're fighting up out of the soil. I'm primarily roasting them. I don't know that I'll have enough to really pickle them. But we'll see. I have some cilantro that volunteered, that went to seed, but beautiful flowers, aren't they? And then more red onions, and then some orange or golden beets. And then I have some volunteer snapdragons, one of my favorite flowers. All right, so corn. We started corn by seed indoors, put it out in the front yard, had some extras, put them in the containers here. Okra, just sowed this yesterday. Sweet potatoes, I have a couple of spaces I'm going to try out sweet potatoes, even at the end of basically June, beginning of July. I'm going to put them in the ground and see what happens. This is one of the first casualties of the heat. I have a couple of potatoes inside of each of these containers, and I wasn't able to, just couldn't keep up with the watering, and they suffered from those 95 plus degree days, or at least the slew of days that were in the 90s. So what are you gonna do? All right, so one more spot in the backyard before we head up front. And again, remember, we're going to cover off on those beds with the insect netting separately. So I'm going to go ahead and call it. This is a set of collard greens. I planted them 2 inside of the grow bags, knowing that they get big, but I didn't intend on having them grow the entire season. And you can see they have just been eaten up. So it's really not the season to grow these kind of greens at all. Typically they do pretty well in my Chicago garden. This year may be the exception. Now I have my favorite summer squash, white scallop squash, that's growing here. I direct sowed it. I transplanted the eggplant. This is a black beauty. I direct sowed some basil, and whatever is eating the eggplant's probably nibbling on the basil as well. I'm basically using this as a space where I can grow them in clusters, and then at this size I'm basically digging them up and transplanting them in other places in the garden. The basil, that is. One of our tomato plants, actually I think this is the only one that's in a container. This is Ace Bush. First time I'm growing it, determinate, but a red slicer. It is doing wonderful. Need to make sure I stay on top of fertilizing. So basically I have so far 3 of the 5 grow bags, the 20 gallons, where we are growing summer plants. We'll plant these 2 with summer things. We're doing a lot of watering, and we're washing away a lot of nutrients when we do that. So I want to make sure that I am keeping up with fertilizing, because when a tomato plant looks that beautiful, it's basically the biggest tomato plant I have in the garden so far. You want to try to keep it healthy and producing. Alrighty, so the intention was green onions, 2 kind of styles of planting. These were planted close together to eat as green onions, and the ones behind them were spaced more so to basically grow the bulb. They're all kind of just green onions. I mean, they're going to produce some type of bulb. The size we'll see. And then I have more golden beets here, and then some celery. And this is what I mean when I talk about some of the heat damage. You can see that brown bit, a little bit of scorching. Then I have some flowers down here. I have a bunch of flowers and I'm still planting all around. All right, let's close up the cage, baby. Get to the front yard. Okie doke, so front yard views. I just love it. So my little office space is upstairs, and I can look down onto this part of the garden, which is just a joy. But when I walk out in the morning, I have this little space that I'm trying to keep watered. I have lemon basil here. It's a little deck or a railing planter, and I put the lemon basil in between the nasturtiums, which should grow kind of bushy and start to trail. But imagine the smell of the lemon basil once you enter this space. I just love it. So a rare mid-video appearance. Go ahead and drop in the comments what's doing really well in your gardens, and don't hesitate to comment on what may be struggling as well. You never know what you're writing that could help someone else, including me as a gardener. But I really want to make sure that we're conscious of both the things that are flourishing, but the things that maybe we can improve on, or the things that we're struggling with. So we're going to cover off on some of that once we dig into the front yard space as well. And remember, we still have that problem area in the backyard. So very quick view, construction in front of the house. And I've done nothing with the front yard flower bed because of it. It's almost an act of protest, I think, in my mind. I don't know what's going to be salvaged. So far, the workers have taken great care to not damage any of the plants. I will need to reapply the border that I had. So it's basically something that I'm thinking maybe late July, maybe August, we'll see. Everything is still growing really well, but I've done really essentially no care. I've not weeded, I've not planted. I normally do a few annuals in the space, and it's okay. We're gonna have to focus on this at a later date, but it's still kind of beautiful, isn't it? Even with the warning signs. All right, so front yard. I was out here yesterday and left my stick. So these are the other planters, and I'm not crazy about the arrangement I created here. So I think I'm gonna need to swap that out. It just isn't giving the feel that I want to give it, or that I wanted it to give. So we did a duplication of the not so impressive arrangement. I have from spring the sweet peas, which I've just enjoyed so much in my salads. One of the lessons is I just didn't plant enough. Can you imagine that with all the things that I plant? This is the one thing I've not planted enough of. The initial goal was to have them grow along this fence line, which didn't happen. So instead we put some pole beans. You can see them there. And we have the trellis that we created from last year that they'll climb. And then I did cucumbers again. So came back for a second year of cucumbers. We'll see how they do. I have had some of the pole beans get eaten up by the roly-polies, unfortunately. So, you know, they'll produce what they produce. We had a bunch of bush beans in the back, and then I have some pole beans that volunteered that I transplanted, which we'll take a quick look at. So one flower arrangement. Remember last time I said I had gone out, broken my rule, and planted or picked up flowers before I planted out all of my veggies? And that has kept me honest if I actually wait for the flowers. I still haven't been inspired, if you will, when it comes to the flower arrangements, which, you know, they're struggling in the little pots that they're in as I decide what I want to do and how I want to plant them. But I got distracted. Carrots, weeds, sunflowers. These are all volunteered. I have some eggplant, which it's slow. I think it's a lot of competition with the sunflowers. You can think about how big sunflower roots are. I dropped in one more tomato start because I had it, and I think it'll be fine in this little corner. It should grow just fine, and it'll be one of the later producing tomatoes because it went in pretty late compared to the others. And I guess again, one could argue all of it's late. This was the broccoli, and so the quick note about my broccoli, half of it bolted. I had a bunch of beautiful side shoots that it produced instead of the head of broccoli. The other half produced a head. Basically everything was ready at the same time, which is a thing I struggle with when it comes to my planting, my timing. But what I ended up doing, maybe about half of the leaves I used for green juice, which I've gotten back to. And while I know that you could cook them up like you can cook up any green, my thought is they're not as tasty as my collard greens would be. So the young healthy leaves I ended up just again using for the really, really small ones. I used in some salads, but then I did some juicing with them. And I think that's what I'm going to do with some of my Swiss chard in the back as well. I think our spacing is pretty nice. We'll see as the plants get larger. Back there, you'll see 2 melon plants. There's one there and then one there. These were sown in May. That's the mango melon, the infamous mango melon that was the best melon I've ever grown, but I've not been able to capture it again in recent years. But I sowed those in May. I also sowed honeydew melon, which either rotted or was eaten by something. So I came back around, I think it's like maybe last week, maybe, I don't remember the timing now. This is probably just 7, maybe 10 days old cucumbers. So we've sown those along this trellis. And we have, remember, the cucumbers on the front fence line. So I did start some indoors just in case the cucumbers were eaten up, but they look like they're holding pretty strong. So here's the last set of garlic. And so, yeah, this scape has gotten some sun scald. So I'm going to come in and just pull all of these. The garlic is looking like it's struggling a bit. When I use the straw, it really retains water, but maybe I haven't watered as well as I should have, kind of assuming that everything is still damp inside given the real heat that we've been experiencing. So parsley, this is what I mean, when it's bolted, you see this thick stalk. It really shouldn't have that thick stalk. It should be more kind of thin like this. It prefers the cooler weather. Parsley here, still pretty. Some flowers. We have a potato here next to, it didn't occur to me until later, another tomato. This is a volunteer. I don't know what it is. It came out of the bed over by the window in the front yard, so I know it's one of X number of tomatoes, and I'm hopeful that it's one that I don't already have growing somewhere. These are the volunteer pole beans I mentioned. There was something planted here, otherwise I would have planted them along this space. So, but there was something growing there when I wanted to transplant them. So they're competing with the sunflowers, which I could pull, but I kind of love them. And they kind of grew where they grew and I let them. And they're also competing with this netting that I put up here. But I think they'll find their way. And then let me come out so we can get a better look. So our dill from when we were last together. You can see the dill heads. And then our cilantro has bolted. But isn't it still gorgeous? So in our 7-gallon grow bags, that potato down there is a 10-gallon grow bag. Our 7-gallon grow bags, more red onions. And it just occurred to me we forgot our fence line containers when we were in the backyard. We'll cover off on those. So our red onions. I think this is Jimmy Nardello pepper. A triple threat again. And then this is, I'm pretty sure, another white scallop. And I keep forgetting to plant this one out. So our potatoes, I think they're doing okay. We had a lot of high winds. I've come in, I've fertilized again using bone meal and then a granular fertilizer that I typically use as kind of my standard fertilizer. I've added some mulch to the 2 sections back there, and then this section that has an indeterminate variety, it's a russet. I've put more soil in, which I could probably come back in and put just a bit more. So it's doing okay, I think. You only know when you know, right? So then in this space, we pulled out, what do we have? Arugula and lettuce, and so we did a zucchini. We'll let one live. We're just gonna see which one does better. And then I have some okra back there, small transplants, but they'll take off. And then I have a yellow squash that's supposed to grow upright. And so again, we'll only let one of them live. And I still have, again, flowers that I need to plant. But I did yesterday some direct sowing of the red beet, the cylinder beet. That's the one that's in the backyard. Cylindra, I think it's pronounced. And the transplanted basil over here. And so I think I have some parsley, young parsley that's in here. I don't know what to make of the scallions. I think I probably need to do a test pool. They, if they're anything like onions, maybe the flopping over means they're done. I poked around. I really didn't feel anything maybe a week ago, but I guess a lot could change in a week. A couple more spaces. So these are more peppers, more sweet peppers. No, there's a jalapeno in there, a white bell, and then probably your typical California wonder. Look at that, just making a home. That's your cabbage worm. Ugh. All right, we'll pick that off. Eggplant back there. I, every season, find a way to put plants in probably the least, ideal space, and this is a case of that. You can see the cabbage has been eaten up. I don't believe the head is going to get much bigger, so we'll see what we do about that. We still have the chard in this space, and then I direct seeded more lemon basil. Okay, so this space I'm just finishing up with planting. Still got a little bit to do. So orange mint, a bell pepper, pineapple mint, celery that has struggled. These 3, and these are 10-gallon grow bags, were just planted yesterday or the day before yesterday. And my wall of peppers in buckets were just planted within the last week. And yeah, they don't look good, but have faith. They will bounce back. These are beautiful transplants. It's kind of sad because I nursed them so much in the grow room this winter and spring, and they've been on my back porch for so many weeks. But I have a start. They will take off once they get acclimated and be bountiful. Right, so a lot of scorching of my bean plants. I am considering again what I'm growing in this space. So let's go ahead and uncover this bed. We're not going to do any harvesting, so we should be able to get in and out of it. It's the bed that, or the sets of beds that have my collards and cabbage that I'm going to have to spend some time with. So the biggest struggle with this space after I added the PVC pipe, because remember this was PEX pipe, I think is it PEX? Do they say PEX or PEX? Anyway, you could see how much the greens have outgrown it. So I added some of my regular PVC pipe as hoops, and this bed is still doing well, but look at all this scorching. I've never seen this. Now, this space gets the most sun in the backyard just based on the positioning, and I think I didn't really give that much thought as I've been planting. So I'm going to have to consider that when it comes to what's being planted in the summer. It just may be too much sun. Between the sun and, you know, how much water the gardener is giving it. Yeah, so probably we'll end up pulling this kale earlier. We were considering that. So the lacinato or dino kale, and leaving the curly kale, since it seems to be doing much better. And we'll obviously pull the kohlrabi. That'll give us a chance to plant maybe some more summer appropriate things in this space. We'll see. I mean, so this is again the dance. If I leave any of the kale, I really want to cover it. But if I pull everything out of the bed, then I can just let it flourish in its natural habitat and not have to worry about the coverings. I'm not quite sure yet. So many garden decisions. We're going to learn our lesson. We're going to cover this space and come back for the finale. Okie doke, so we're going to spend some time here. There are two things that are happening. One is extensive cabbage worm damage, more than I've ever seen. So it's not the cover, it's not the insect netting, because there's insect netting on this space. And by the way, this is my makeshift shade cloth. This is really weed barrier, the really, really thin one that really doesn't prevent any weeds from coming up. And I've just been using it on these spaces. I tried it, I think maybe 2 years ago, last year for sure. And it doesn't seem to harm the plants. And it's creating a little bit of shade for the strong sun. Remember, these are cool weather crops that I'm growing now in summer, and I have for years, and not really had any trouble. This is kind of the first year where I've seen some effects of the heat. I think that is why these cabbage heads are not really forming to the size that you'd want for the red cabbage. This variety, it's Ruby Perfection, I think. Normally would get larger than this. I think the heat is why these cabbage have a cone shape. It's a golden acre, and I'm just looking at worms. So the cabbage worm damage and the heat has made these two beds struggle. And so I noticed the cabbage worm damage on one of the cabbages back at the beginning of June. I was gone for a few days and I just couldn't stay on top of it. And when I came back, I'll be frank, I was kind of neglectful. Like, I really need to be in here every day picking worms off. I also should have harvested before this, but it was just so hot and I just really didn't want to deal with after I pick all of these leaves. I got to do something with them in the kitchen. And because there is quite a bit of damage, it creates just more work when it comes to sorting through them. So what we're going to do, no sense in crying over spilled garden cabbage worms damage. I'll show you all what we harvest, because we're going to end up harvesting at least one of the cabbage heads, the green cabbage down here. I did a test yesterday, and while it has this odd shape, the head itself is firm. So that's ready to come out, and I'll check the other two. And then we'll come in and do a clean sweep of the cabbage. What from these plants, once we harvest a bunch, makes sense to keep, and what makes sense to toss. Fair warning, sometimes once you dig into this, you realize like all can't be saved, or maybe even none can be saved. So it's a part of the process, and it's okay. All right, so interestingly enough, the damage was less about the cabbage worm, although many of the leaves have holes in them. It is so many aphids. These leaves are pretty clean, but like this is an example of one that can come out. It's hard to see. It's the aphid damage, the little brown eggs. I assume those are aphids. Yeah, so that was the hard part, and I'll have to really clean the leaves good. I don't know, based on what I have, whether or not I'll be cooking up a pot of greens. These will probably be cleaned really well and chopped up for things like smoothies, or things like, again, juicing, things where the look doesn't matter so much. When I do my southern style collard greens, you know, they're cut pretty small, but I still don't want to kind of just be eating leaves that have a whole bunch of holes in them. So we pulled up the 3 heads of cabbage. This is a collard green plant that I sowed by seed. I mistakenly tried to move it, which is probably a mistake. I don't know if it's going to survive even its roots being disturbed, especially going into a hotter day. So the red cabbage we left. Here is the aftermath. I hate cleaning up a bed in this way. I kind of want to just focus on putting everything in a bucket or a bag as I do it, but I just had to get it done. And so these are 3 heads of cabbage. So yeah, we're gonna water the space in well. All right, that may be a better view. They all don't have, the ones I picked, this kind of aphid damage or egg damage, but a lot of them do. So you actually have to physically rub that off. So I'm going to try to do some of that outside before I take them into my kitchen. Yeah, this is what we have. Oh, poor things. Thanks so much for spending some time with me. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. And please do tell me what's going on in your garden, what's doing well, what's struggling a little bit. I'll see y'all in the next one.